There is a lot of misguidance out there on becoming a real man. So I want to bring some clarity by giving you 15 qualities of a godly man. So if you ask 10 people to describe the real man, they might use words like rugged or muscular, maybe successful. And depending on their religious and political views, they may say something like inconsequential or chauvinistic, or maybe even violent. Listen to what one journalist wrote. Progressives tell us that men are destructive rulers in the world, low intelligence Neanderthals and oppressors of women. And thanks to modern science, men are not even essential for procreation. Our world is in desperate need of godly men. And despite the noise out there, we don't have to be confused about how that kind of man is described, because God has given his own terms for the godly man, and they are found in 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7. Now, as we walk through them, I want you to ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do I land? How am I doing? And with what characteristics do I need the most help? Afterward, I encourage you to write them down, carefully pray through them as often as you can, and subscribe, because we will walk meticulously through each of these qualities in the coming videos. So for now, let's briefly look at these qualities. Number 1, above reproach. This is the overarching quality that informs the rest of the list, so pay close attention. It tells us to build a blameless reputation. It doesn't tell us to build a sinless reputation, but a blameless reputation. This means that accusations against you don't stick. Your reputation repels them. Number 2, the husband of one wife. Now, before you start bragging like you've got this, it's a little more nuanced than you think. It means that we need to build a pure affection. So when it comes to our sexual desires, we need to develop a purity in our passions. Number 3, sober-minded. This quality tells us that we must build a sensible mind. It's a mind that thinks objectively about life and our choices. It means that we need to be sensible in our thinking. Number 4, self-controlled. Now, the previous quality tells us to be disciplined in our thinking. This quality tells us to be disciplined in our body. It says that we need to build a restrained appetite. When it comes to things that satisfy the body, like food and sleep, entertainment, we need to have a healthy moderation. Number 5, respectable. This is an interesting word that we'll unpack in a later video, but for now it tells us to build a respectable attraction. When people get to know you, they are compelled to imitate you. They are drawn to your godly qualities. Number 6, hospitable. When you hear this word, don't think only about inviting people into your home. It's more than that. It tells us to build a responsive sympathy. It refers to being mindful and prepared to meet the needs of those around you. Number 7, able to teach. Now you might be saying to yourself, yeah, that's not me. I'm not standing up and teaching people. But this quality is not about public speaking. It tells us to build a powerful speech. In other words, we are to work on our communication skills in order to speak in ways that are helpful to others. Number 8, not a drunkard. I know that some of you guys are a little scared about this one, but this tells us to build a continual soberness. It means that you're not the guy who is always found at the bar. If you drink moderately and carefully, always seeking to have a reputation of soberness. Hey, listen, if you're getting value out of this, hit the subscribe button, because we're going to deep dive into each of these qualities in the coming videos, and you'll want to be the first to know. Number 9, not violent. This one is pretty clear. We are to build a stubborn calmness and not be known for physical aggression. When you believe you have been wronged, you don't exact bodily revenge. You don't speak with your fists. Number 10, gentle. Now, this does not mean that you need to be a weak pushover. It tells us to build a persistent patience, specifically when dealing with hardheads and people who are generally slow to get with the program. Number 11, not quarrelsome. This quality is different from not violent. And it tells us to build a peaceful pursuit. It means that we have a genuine appreciation for peace and desire others to live in it. Number 12, not a lover of money. This one will hit us hard, man. It tells us to build a satisfied contentment. It means that we are not slaves to material things. And we'll talk more about that in a coming video. Number 13, he must manage his own household well. This tells us to build a successful home. It doesn't mean that our house is perfect, but that we are leading it in a way that is consistent with God's design. Number 14, not be a recent convert. And don't be confused about this one. It is not about how many years you've been walking with God, but how you have grown during those years of walking with God. It tells us to build a seasoned humility, educated by our struggles. And finally, he must be well thought of by outsiders. This is a lot like our first quality, but it relates to how the world sees us. It tells us to build a consistent testimony so that outsiders recognize that God is working in us. Now, how did you score yourself on these characteristics? If you rated yourself on the lower end, you'll need to devote more attention to those qualities. So in the coming weeks, we are going to deep dive into each of these characteristics and provide some practical ways to build a godly life characteristic by characteristic. So subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be notified when the videos release. And if you can, drop a comment below so we can keep the conversation going. I want to know what you're thinking about these qualities. Also, if you want to read more about this specific topic, I left a link in the description to an article that unpacks this a bit more. And in the next video, we're going to talk about how you can build a blameless reputation. I'll see you then.